Hello everyone, welcome to English Champion. On this episode, I'm going to talk about a new book that came out just this year. It's called Brave New Worlds, How AI Will Revolutionize Education and Why That's a Good Thing by Salman Khan. I've titled this podcast, I Read This Book So You Don't Have to. For those who have followed me for a while, read the things that I write, and watched previous videos, you'll know that I'm not big on the development of AI, but I've chosen to read this book because I truly want to learn the other side and hear, the expert perspective on how this might work and why this might be a good thing. Maybe I'm missing something. So even as someone who strongly has fought against it, I still want to learn as well. So that's why we're tackling this book. And just so happens that as I read the book, I still had a lot of problems with it. So those are what I'm going to share with you coming up. I originally took a bunch of notes. I was going to do a breakdown of the whole book. And then as I look back at my notes, I realized that would probably be like a 4-hour podcast. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through the first couple chapters, and then I'm going to hit a couple high points throughout the rest of the book, and I'll stop there. But the reason I want to share it with you is because this way of thinking, that AI and all this advancing technology on generative intelligence is going to revolutionize everything we do. That's becoming the common way of thinking, and I'm going to point out why so much of that is, I don't want to say nonsense, but it's really kind of stupid. And we can do better than this. The problem, as I'll explain as we go, the reason this is gaining traction is because parents and teachers have done a terrible job. And so these tech folks have come along and said, well, we can do this better. When if the adults, the parents and the teachers would have just done their job, or they could change course now and start doing a better job, you wouldn't need all of this. And so the things I'm going to point out here are from I'm not going to say a limited perspective, because he does explain that he does a lot of research and he talks to a bunch of experts, but it really shows that these people don't know a lot about education. And, they know how to do some tutoring, but they don't really know how young people's minds work, and they don't understand the mentor and apprentice relationship that a teacher should have with a student, and how the human connection really guides the learning. He's going to explain how if you just have the right computer program, it can do everything for you. And I'm going to argue that that's silly. And so let's dive in. He starts the book by sharing a story of his 11-year-old daughter who is writing a story with the AI program that he has, been helping to design. It sounds interesting, and so he's using this clever, look how amazing and creative this is, to kind of catch our attention, and how it gets his daughter very excited. However, what they're doing is simply interacting with the computer as if the computer is kind of part of the story, and that she can interact with the characters in the story, which sounds interesting. That's cool. But it's also not the best way that you could actually be teaching this young girl about how to write a cool story. So what he could be doing as the dad is actually guiding his daughter through the storytelling and creative writing process in a way that would actually be a lot more helpful than what the computer is doing. And so the computer basically, says, what do you think the character should do? And she says, how about they do this? And so the AI writes 4 sentences for her and then says, all right, now you do 2 sentences. So already the computer is doing twice as much work as she is. Seems backwards from what it should be, but whatever. So the computer is helping her write a story. Sounds great, except again, the dad or a good teacher could be doing this for her already. And in fact, this girl's 11, it's not about her, it's about the process that he's undergoing with his daughter. But this is the kind of stuff you do with 5 and 6-year-olds. My dad does this with the grandkids all the time, where he starts a story with the 5-year-old and says, okay, now you go, what should we do next? And they build a story together. But once they're older, you can actually be training that student the structure and the narrative qualities where they can write their own story. So this almost feels a little bit like it's doing the parent's job for you, which isn't good. And it's also not even doing it in the best way possible. As someone who's taught creative writing and storytelling and fiction many, many years, you could do this better, actually. But they think it's amazing. So this is where it starts. That everything about the AI is so great. There's nothing wrong with it, and it can do all these things. And that's what each chapter is about: is all the different things. So as the introduction continues, goes into a little bit of his background. Of course, Salman Khan is the founder of Khan Academy, which is this like billion-dollar organization that has helped a bunch of kids all over the world with some of their skills, offering kind of private tutoring in a digital format, which is great. So some background about that. And as he starts getting into the functions of the Chat GPT and the AI programs, he starts talking about how he's amazed at how human and lifelike it is when it has a conversation with you. And it just goes to show you that these tech people don't understand human beings, because when you actually participate with it, which I've done, and the examples that he gives throughout the book, they don't sound like real people at all. It's pretty silly. It sounds like a robot trying to act like a human being, and it's not. You kind of go, yeah, that's not a real person. Real people don't talk like that. One thing that happens a lot, I'll probably mention it again, is there's exclamation points all over. So when it spits out the text, everything's, the first line is always an exclamation point. It's always like, that's great. You're on the right track. Way to go. Everything's all positive, and it's exclamation points everywhere. It's like, yeah, real people don't talk like that. So it's so funny when these tech people are saying, oh, it's so human-like. It's so realistic. And like, do you know anything about people? It's so weird that you think that's normal. So that's where he starts the book, by trying to convince us that, oh, it's so lifelike. I actually want to point out some specific passages of the text. So if you'll stay with me, I can be very specific for you here. Page 27 of the introduction. Yes, an introduction with 27 pages. He starts asking all these questions about the capabilities of the AI. He says, what if the AI was able to help teachers write their lesson plans? I don't know why teachers would need help writing their lesson plans. If you're a good teacher, writing a lesson plan is not hard. So I don't even know why that is something you'd want it to do for you, but that's what they're trying to do. What if it could enter into a debate with a student? Again, that's what teachers should be doing. What if it could create projects? Also what teachers should be doing. What if it could help a student remove stressors or inspire a student to create new ideas? Again, good teachers can do all of this already. What if the technology was able to quiz a student or lead a student in a review session? Again, that's what teachers do. So all of the things he talks about, maybe not all, most of the things he talks about, are things that good teachers should have been doing, already are doing, and will continue to do without the help of AI. Again, the problem, though, is that he and other people, I'm sure, have seen over the years, because of falling test scores and just lack of preparedness for the adult world, whatever it is that we're seeing with young people who are not as successful as they should be, they came in and said, well, maybe our kids aren't learning as much, so we need some better programs and better tools, as he calls them. We've kind of done this to ourselves, but those of us who are good teachers and we know how to do all these things already and can do them at scale relatively well, yeah, maybe not with thousands of students, but in our own classrooms, even large classrooms, those of us who know what we're doing can already do this. So it's sort of weird that these guys, these tech people think, what if we could do this amazing thing? And those of us who are teachers like, yeah, I've been doing that for 20 years. What are you talking about? You think you're coming up with groundbreaking stuff here? It's not. We regular people have been doing this already. So why do I need that? The very next page, after presenting a few fair concerns, like he recognizes that there could be some problems and teachers and parents might have some worries about this. So at least he does recognize, though. But on the next page, he asks about some of these fears and concerns. He says, was it going to be a distraction for students? And the answer to all of this is yes. It's all very distracting. Was it going to lower their attention spans? Again, yes. Would it isolate students instead of promoting connections between them and their teachers? Absolutely, yes. How are students going to know what to be able to watch? And whom would they ask if they got stuck on a subject and had questions? So, he's trying to get ahead of the problems that might come up with the AI. But we already know the answers to these, because even in its short time AI has been around, we've seen these problems. And they're the exact same problems we've had with all the other technologies that have come out that have supposed to have been helpful educational tools for the classroom. And yeah, they do all of this. They shorten attention span. They cause distractions. They put barriers between human beings, between either the kids and their classmates or the kids and their teachers or the kids and their parents. All of this is already happening. So when he's wondering, gosh, is the AI going to cause these problems? Yeah, we already know the answer because we saw it before. And in a year and a half of having this in every kid's hands, we already know this happens. So not a surprise at all. Here's where some of this gets tricky from the construction and design component on the exact same page, still in the introduction. He was talking about the testing of ChatGPT 4. He said, the more we realized how to mitigate problems, and then more verbs like, we considered what it would take. We thought about student safety. We considered creating a system. We suggested tools. It's all this we language and these active verbs that they're the ones building it. So what we have to constantly remind ourselves of is there are people behind the scenes. There are these designers, coders, programmers, whatever, computer scientists who are building these apps, these AIs, these ChatGPTs, and we probably think, oh, these pieces of technology, these programs, they're neutral. They're just technology, and we forget that it's him and all his friends that are behind all this. And I'm not saying they're doing a bad job. I'm just saying we have to recognize that there's people, and they're the ones hashing out the capabilities. They're the ones dealing with any potential glitches that come up. They're the ones running the tests. The question we have to ask ourselves is, how much do we trust these people to actually be building things that we want for our children? Or is it better that I do it as a parent or as a teacher? Because then I know what I'm teaching my child. When it's so easy and accessible to just use these computer programs, even ones that are very advanced like this generative intelligence, it's very easy to forget that there's still people behind it. And the people are going to have their own beliefs. They're going to have their own ways of doing things that they think are better than what you would do as a parent or as a teacher. So it's just something to think about when this particular passage where he's saying, we were doing this, we were doing that. It's like, yeah, but who is that we exactly? I know you think you got together all a bunch of smart people, and I trust that you're very good at computer engineering. I understand that. But that doesn't mean you are on the same page as I am with my classroom or my children. And to think you can do things, or your program can do things in the same way that I can, with the values, with the certain things I want to emphasize, whatever it is in my teaching environment, it's probably going to be different than what you're doing. So trusting you, it's a bit of a leap. We'll get back to that trust idea here in a moment when he concludes the introduction. So he goes through the release of ChatGPT 3.5, and he immediately shows how there were a bunch of problems that came out with it. So as you know, I played around with it when it first came out in November of 2022, and I started noticing all these problems too. So he knew there were problems because he's been testing it. All his computer programming buddies have been testing it, and so they knew that it wasn't perfect. He called it suboptimal, and yet they still released it, right? Because that's the way of these tech people is, yeah, it has a whole bunch of problems with it, but let's get it out because it's really cool and people will want to buy it, or people are going to want to use it, and we can gather data or sell something to them, or whatever the goal is with these things. They know that there are going to be problems, and yet they do it anyway. And then we use it because we're kind of the guinea pigs in all this. And then, yeah, they're going to try to improve it. But in the meantime, a whole bunch of problems have occurred, and a lot of our students have become worse in their education environment because they've started using these things. So again, that's the tech world. Everything is like, it's good enough. Get it out there. Let's have people start using it. And there's still a lot of problems. He closes the introduction by using a phrase. He says, the goal should be to have educated bravery. That's what he says. Where it's, we're not jumping in blind. We're not winging it here. We've practiced, we've tested, we know what it's capable of and what the positives could be. There could be tremendous benefits. But even if you're scared, you should be brave. And, let's explore this together. So he's using very optimistic phrasing there. But the implication of that phrasing, when you say, we need to have educated bravery, notice the implication is that anyone who questions it or has some big problems with it is automatically, well, you're either uneducated or you're a coward. So there's not a lot of room here for those of us who have played around with it, who have studied it, who have tried experimenting with it with our students. We've seen the effects of it on our kids. And his answer is always going to be, well, you need to have bravery. Like, really? You're not educated enough. So very clever phrasing, and the implication of that is not good, that you have to agree. Otherwise, you're either dumb or a wimp. So that's how he starts the book. All right, chapter 1. Like everyone in the tech space, everything is just a tool. He says, the same banal phrasing that everyone uses. It's not good or bad. It's how you use it that matters. And that's like the most ancient way of thinking about things. That, yeah, I get it. I can use a hammer to help build my house, or I can use a hammer to murder someone. I know it always comes down to how you use it. But it's never just a tool. People like this, they really need to read Marshall McLuhan, Neil Postman, Nicholas Carr, because they talk about you can't just call things a tool. There's always a value built into it. And yeah, you're going to have to decide what you're going to do with it. But there's some things that maybe we shouldn't use them. Even if they have some good qualities, maybe the value that's embedded in it maybe isn't worth the cost. And so when we just say, well, it's up to you, you're the one who decides. Well, yeah, that's true of everything. But, that doesn't mean it's automatically worthwhile either. So this is how tech people think. Nothing ever has values. It's always just a tool, just a piece of machinery, just a piece of computer programming and data and numbers. It's just how you use it. And that is a slippery slope that leads to some real problems. And so we've just got to be smarter than that. And I wish these writers would stop using such banal phrases. One of his goals, he says, closest to my heart, is that these AI tools can be a means to learn and improve yourself. Maybe, except through the rest of this book, he's going to talk about not just improving yourself. He's going to incorporate it with formalized education. And when we're talking about formalized education, I actually have a podcast coming out next week about the problems with some of the online environment in a formalized education atmosphere. And we're left asking, well, learn about what? Improve yourself how exactly? And if you're going to improve yourself, well, you can do that outside of schooling. So why do we need this in school? If we want to do this outside of school, where people genuinely want to explore things on their own for their own personal learning, okay, fine. But the problem I have as an educator is integrating this into a classroom and thinking there's not going to be any bad consequences to this. When we say it's just to learn and improve yourself, that sounds so great and so positive, and yet there's always a downside. There's always a trade-off. And as I go through the book, I'm just going to highlight the ways that I don't think these people have thought deeply enough about those potential trade-offs, especially in a formal learning environment. One thing he does a lot in the book is he uses phrasing like this. He says, students who learn to use AI ethically and productively may learn not only at an exponentially higher rate than others, but also in a way that allows them to remain competitive throughout their careers. So there's a couple caveats in there, right? Students who, if they do this, if they choose to be ethical, if they use it productively, well, anyone who knows anything about children knows that's not how they use it, okay? Doing things ethically and productively is usually way down the list when you hand students a flashy new toy, all right? As I saw in the classroom at the college level, yeah, the ethics and the productivity, those don't always go together. So why are you assuming that they would? Now, he would say, well, you're going to have to teach them how to do it. And it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter. They're going to use it how they're going to use it. So that's something else that pervades this book, is the idea that if we just build it, we know that if the kids use it in the right way, it'll be great. Without thinking, how can you be so sure that you know how kids are going to use it? Because that's not for certain. Famously, and I tell this story to my students all the time, when you watch the video of Steve Jobs releasing the new iPhone to the public, he doesn't quite know how people are going to use it. He thinks people are going to use it in one way. Turns out people use their iPhones in a completely different way. The way he was, the things that turned out to be true, he thought that was going to be like third and fourth on the list. It's like, nope, those are the ways that people actually use it. The inventor of the iPhone himself didn't know that. So like, that's what these tech people think. They think we know how people are going to use it, and we designed it this way, and they're going to use it that way. And you cannot be sure of that. That is not for certain, especially when we're talking about students. Ethics for just productivity, that's not going to happen. And that's why we saw all the cheating and everything else that came out of the first iteration of ChatGPT. So yeah, if they use it ethically and productively, they may learn. It's not for certain. They might learn it. So again, this is all on hope. That's why he's saying, it's this brave leap. You got to trust the process. It's like, yeah, we do that with every new thing that comes out. There is an element of you got to try it and have a little faith that it might do what it does. But again, are you thinking about all the trade-offs here? Because there's a lot of problems with this. So again, with this may language, the next paragraph, he says, those who can steer AI to partner with them and know what great writing entails. Lots of caveats there. There's a whole bunch of stuff underneath that very simple sentence that has to go right for this to work. They may be able to. They can do it. They'll be most likely to see around the corners in the marketplace. Those who can brainstorm with AI will appear more creative. Oh, but will they be more creative, or will they just appear to be more creative? Because that's what happens in the classroom. The student might look like a better writer. They're not a better writer. They may look smarter. They're not. Okay? So all of this, again, very high hopes, and it has to be used just precisely for this to have a chance of working out. And anything with kids, we know, what are the odds that this is going to go well? I don't know. He also talks about the idea of safety. He says from the start, safety was the most important problem to solve. And as I said a minute ago, there's lots of we language here. It's like, well, yeah, who are you people though? When you say we were working on this to provide safety and protection for our children in these platforms, who are you and why would we trust you? And how would we know that your values are the same as my values as a parent or as a teacher? You might think you're installing safety measures, but what if they aren't the safety measures that I want as the person training my children? So again, back to the, I know you guys are working on it, but how do I know that I should trust you and that you're going to do things in the way that I want them done for my children? And again, he concludes the chapter by saying, technology is not something to fear, but to use. Maybe. What if it's really worth fearing, though? Have you thought of that? Engagement with generative AI can potentially, notice that, benefit students by providing new ways for them to learn the material, enhancing collaborative learning, stoking creativity, promoting socialization, and even helping kids through mental health issues, as well as offering new, again, this all the list of positives without any of the acknowledgement of what could possibly go wrong here. Is there anything that might not work? What would the scenario be that you would recognize would be a bad outcome of this? Can you explain that at all? They don't really do that. So everything is, it can potentially, maybe, if we do it right, and then they tell you how everything's going to be awesome. The big irony at the end of this first chapter is he closes the passage with this sentence: rather than pushing our kids to avoid AI, this other scientist guy says we can help them learn smarter. That's actually not the correct grammar. So the AI people couldn't write the grammatically correct sentence here. So I don't know if the AI told them to do it that way or what, but even they need some extra help with their writing. And he kind of concludes by saying, the genie's out of the bottle. It's time we throw the bottle away and our fear of generative AI along with it. So it's just one of those things where it's like, well, it's here. You can't do anything about it. So you might as well accept it and embrace it. Like, that's like saying, alcohol's always around your kids. So you might as well just accept that they're going to start drinking. And in fact, maybe you should hand them a beer and help them get used to it. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. If I don't want my kid drinking, I'm not going to allow them to use alcohol. I'm not going to have it around. I don't want it influencing them. Now, I'm not stupid enough to know that it's out there, but that doesn't mean I have to participate in it. So when they say, look, the genie's out of the bottle, you might as well just go get on board with it. That is not a good argument, because there's all sorts of things in life that we don't just get on board with. Chapter 2, how to teach everything to everyone. Again, grand ideas, big hopes. I'll just quickly summarize this one. He has the goal of giving everyone access, but also not just giving people answers. It's to be a lifelong tutor. And so that's sort of the point of where all this is going. Is it's not just another Google, which spits out answers. It's not even ChatGPT, which will write something for you. He's imagining that these new AI platforms can be more than just informational. They can be interactional, and they can guide you as if you had a teacher or a tutor sitting next to you as a student and helping you with your math homework or your writing projects or your history lesson or whatever it is. So he kind of just lays out in this quick chapter the overarching goal of the AI platforms of this tutoring mentality, which sounds great. It's interesting. But then he gets into the subject areas, and let's dive into that a little bit. So he starts out by saying, one-on-one tutoring is the best way to learn. And that's totally true. And that's why he's trying to approach the problem of, large classes where a teacher has 35 students or whatever, where maybe we could create learning environments where it feels like a lot more one-to-one, because many teachers can't quite do that. Now, again, good teachers figure it out. I've taught classes of 25, 30 students, and I create lots of one-on-one opportunities. Yeah, it's not one-on-one for a whole hour or something, but I create environments where the student feels like I'm sitting next to him or her while we're working on the assignment, and I'm answering questions and offering challenges and making them think. Even if it's not the full class period, I make them feel like I'm there and available for the full class period. So again, good teachers can already kind of do this. Again, you can't do it with 1,000 people, but in normal classroom situations, yeah, this is for people who aren't good teachers. And if you aren't a good teacher, you shouldn't be a teacher. That's what we're getting at here. So he offers some examples throughout the book of a student, apparently. I don't buy it at all that this is an actual student. I think he's making this up, but whatever. That's having a conversation with the AI tutor. And so, they're talking about a math problem, and the kid says, I don't really like math very much. I'd rather be talking about soccer. And so the tutor, the AI imaginary computer program tutor, gives this very strange example of equating, polynomial math problems to soccer. And this doesn't actually make a lot of sense. The authors here are just trying their best to say, look, it can connect with other things. But the example it gives is quite terrible. Meanwhile, a real teacher who actually knows how to communicate with kids and has background in sports or music or other activities like good teachers do, can already do this. Again, the people who are advocating this are almost like they think they're inventing this style of teaching. It's like, no, those of us who are good, we already do this. This is not new. And in fact, we do it better than your little computer program. So it's just very funny that there's several pages and throughout the book, several examples of these, of the connections that the computer tries to make with the student. And you're like, that's not even a good example. Why did you pick that one? Any remotely intelligent teacher could have come up with a better example than that one. So you're not making a great case for your AI tutor. So at the top of page 21 in the book, again, we're talking about Brave New Worlds by Salman Khan. He says, today students can ask the program what they need to work on, and based on the program's running memory of their progress, the AI tutor will make suggestions and engage them with conversations, content, quizzes, and tests. The AI tutor meets students right at their learning edge at the zone of their proximal development at a level that stretches them but isn't too easy, isn't too hard. Students feel like they're part of the journey. Maybe, that sounds nice. Again, teachers should already be doing that. But this assumes that the student is using the computer program the way you think they're going to use it. Instead, what students do is they just search for answers. Okay, that's why Google is so powerful. That's why the basic ChatGPT programs are so powerful. It just gives you the answer. So again, we're functioning on many assumptions here. The assumption being, the biggest one being, that you think students are going to ask the program, can you help me? Don't give me the answers, just help me. You think any kid's going to do that? The kids are going to do whatever they can to just go find the answers to whatever their homework is asking of them. So I don't even know why a kid would use this, because if they're doing whatever, a science lesson or a history lesson or whatever, where they just need some facts, they just need to understand the reading. And if they go on your tutoring program and it doesn't help them, why would they not just turn it off and go to Google? I don't even understand why students would do this if left to their own devices. Now, if you're imagining that you're going to force them to do it, okay, but is that, again, can't a teacher just force kids to do stuff? I don't know why I need now a computer program to force a kid to do it. So it's all just very confusing. I don't quite understand why they think the kids are going to embrace this the way they hope they will. So it concludes the chapter by saying, the benefit, of course, and this is understandable, that the AI tutor is available 24/7, all the time. It's not competing for attention with other students. If a teacher has to talk to a bunch of students, it's very flexible and accessible. So I get it. One of the arguments it says is some students might even feel more comfortable asking certain questions to an AI because they would have far less fear of being judged or wasting the human tutor's precious or expensive time. Yeah, because that's what we want to do. We want to get students talking to machines instead of getting used to asking human adults their questions. So if kids are more comfortable talking to a computer, that's a big problem. We shouldn't be embracing that. We should be training that out of students, that when there are human beings around, you need to know how to talk to them. If you have a question, here's how you ask. If you disagree with something, here's how you do that. It's not to run away from it and go, I don't want to talk to you, human tutor, human teacher, human parent. I want to talk to my computer AI instead because they're nicer to me. Why would we want children to be like that? So this idea of, well, it's more comfortable for the kid. Yeah, that's the exact opposite of what we should be having our young people doing. So then we get to chapter 4, which is about writing. Once it gets into the actual English sections of the book, that's when my blood pressure started rising a little bit more, because again, further things here where it's like you don't quite know what we're trying to do here. You think you do, and you think you can develop a machine to do it for us, but you don't quite get it. And so let me give you a couple examples, first of all, about writing in this chapter. The thing that I mentioned it previously, but and even Khan was concerned about it and saw it when the first rollout happened, is that cheating has become rampant with these AI tools. And writing is one of those places where cheating has become worse than ever, because writing itself is a difficult task. And so as hard as studying for a test is, or doing any other assignment is, writing is in many ways even more difficult because it's time consuming. There's a lot of rules to follow. And so, of course, if you have this amazing machine, what are they going to do with it? What's a student going to use it for? They're just going to have it do it for them. And so he tries to explain how the computer won't do that, but it just will. And there's just no way of getting around that. So one thing that really bothered me is early in the chapter, he says this just basic sentence: at its most essential, writing is a form of communication. All right, if you think that writing is only for communicating, again, it shows you don't know anything about writing. And so when you're building these platforms that are trying to teach things, but you don't even understand the purpose of what you're teaching, that's a huge red flag. When you think the whole purpose of writing is just to communicate, as if it's another form of talking, you're missing it. You don't get it. Writing is for clarifying our own ideas, that we can put something on the page and look at it and analyze our own thoughts. It's about serving other people. It's about a whole host of things that make us human besides just the utilitarian method of communicating with each other. So that's why these people who are designing these programs, they're thinking of all of this in a utilitarian method, and they're couching it under the guise of it being, as a tutor, and it's very helpful and it's guiding you. But at the end of it, this is how they look at it. It's all for utilitarian purposes. It's just to accomplish tasks. So if we're teaching students that you just need these things to accomplish tasks, then all they're going to do, logically, is figure out the easiest way to accomplish the task. And the easiest way to do that is not through your fancy AI tutoring. It's just to have something do it for you. That's why this bothers me so much from the English standpoint, is you don't even get what we're doing. And so you come along and you think you can design something that teaches it better, and you can't, because you don't even know what you're talking about. So writing is not just a form of communication. Yes, that is a basic function, as a utilitarian function it is, but there's way more to it than that, and he doesn't really get that. So I want to read a bit of an extended section for you because it's quite amazing. He talks about how doing things in class instead of assigning things for homework might be the way to maintain the integrity and have the teacher sort of supervise the writing process. Again, that's what I started doing, because if I let them go and write it at home, they were going to cheat. And so I started implementing writing in class so I could watch them do it by hand. So he's right. You could do that. So he says this: if the goal is to understand a student's ability to do novel research or their ability to conduct investigative journalism, is it even bad to use ChatGPT in the first place? Well, maybe. It depends on what you're looking for. Obviously people use Google and look stuff up because you're trying to search for information. But again, it depends on what you're using it for precisely. After all, ChatGPT can't do the most important part, conducting an experiment or interviewing people or observing an event. Well, it can't do it legitimately, but it can fake it. It can pretend to do that. It can manufacture data. It could imagine that that it's observing an event. It could imagine interviewing people. That's what the very first story of the book, with the little girl imagining, or having the computer imagine, that someone else is talking. So it can totally make that up. So again, why wouldn't the student just do that? So this isn't mitigating cheating. It's just, offering another avenue for it. Even more in the workplace, these tasks will increasingly use tools like ChatGPT. So wouldn't it be good for students to learn how to employ them while in school? Again, it depends on the task. You might think, well, you're going to have to write a lot of emails at your job, so you might as well have ChatGPT do it or help you with it. But you're assuming that that's the right way to go about doing your job. Just because that's what people are doing doesn't mean that's the right way to do it. So again, this whole idea of, you can't stop it, so you might as well just embrace it. That doesn't work. These questions and concerns start an even more fundamental conversation about the taxonomy of cheating, which is complex, contradictory, and sometimes as hard to define as it is to prevent. You could debate what's worse, getting someone to write your paper for you or outright plagiarism. Both are trying to pass off someone else's work as your own. It's true. Cutting and pasting from the internet to compile an essay is cheating, as is copying off someone else's test or handing in your big sister's paper from 5 years ago and calling it your own. Again, true. But what about bouncing ideas off friends or family? What about asking them to critique your work? What if you get help thinking through your thesis statement or coming up with data to back up your points? You mean like people have always done? Again, why do I need a computer for that? If I want to bounce an idea off somebody, that's fine. What do I need the AI program for? Things only get less clear from here. Is getting help from family members, a writing coach, or tutors while writing an essay cheating? Well, it depends on what exactly they're getting help with. The AI, again, can write it for you. He's going to claim that it won't, but it can and it will, because that's what students will ask it to do. No matter what safeguards you put in place, they'll figure out a way to do that. Other writing coaches, family members, or tutors, hopefully, if they're good at what they're doing, won't do that. So the idea of getting help, well, what do you mean by that exactly? Spell checkers and grammar checkers might have seemed like cheating to a teacher 50 years ago, but now they are common practice. What about tools like Grammarly, which don't just correct your basic grammar, but can rephrase entire paragraphs to make them clearer and more cogent? This is a commonplace tool that most teachers do not consider cheating. Well, that depends. I do. I don't have problems with Grammarly fixing your commas or fixing a spelling error. I have no problem with the basic technical components of grammar being corrected. That's different, though, than rephrasing entire paragraphs to make them clearer. That's a problem. So I know that I haven't used it, but I know that an advanced level of Grammarly does that. And in my classes, I always said the basic form of Grammarly, which again just fixes your punctuation and stuff like that, I'm okay with that. This advanced level, I'm not okay with, because it's rewriting. It's using its own language in place of yours. That's not okay. So again, when he lumps these things together and says, well, it's all the same. It's like, no, it's not. These things are different. You can't just say that, well, they're already using the tool, so again, you might as well just go along with it. It depends on the specific functions of that tool or the person they're working with. And there are different levels of getting help versus cheating. And he's kind of just trying to lump all those together. And this is all before we even add generative AI to the mix. If a student asks the AI for advice but doesn't use it, asks it to punch up a paragraph or asks it to generate a first draft, and they edit and revise to the point that it is a completely different paper, do any of these scenarios constitute cheating? Why in the world would a student do any of that? You're not thinking like a kid. Think like a 16-year-old. No 16-year-old would do this. Ask the AI for advice, but then doesn't use it? Why would they even ask it for advice? If that student knows I could do this on my own, then they'll do it on their own. Ask it to generate a first draft that they edit and revise to the point that it's a completely different paper. If it's a completely different paper, why did they have the AI write it in the first place? Just write your own paper. This seems like a tremendous waste of time. You don't think kids know that this would be a stupid waste of time? If you do that, yes, this would be, well, it'd be a form of cheating. I mean, if you completely change it, I guess maybe it wouldn't be, but that would never happen. So this is a really stupid example. So like I said, it's like these guys don't understand young people's brains. And I don't think they do. Why? Because they've been studying the brains of computers their whole lives. They don't know how human beings work. It's hilarious that they think these are legitimate questions to ask. It gives them examples of how the generative AI is not very good at doing things that are original, which seems to contradict the whole point of the first story, where the AI was coming up with story elements that were original. So again, contradicting itself. This teacher from Yale actually says, I tell my students to use the technology to help them from zero. And then it's their job to question the AI, double check, triple check, and use it to move their original work forward. All right, so I've talked about this on previous podcasts, that if you need something to move you from zero, it means you're not smart enough. It means you haven't learned enough, because otherwise you wouldn't be at zero. You would already have stuff in your brain that you could build upon. So if you have to start from zero, it means you don't know anything. So that means you're asking the computer to do your work for you. And that's the cheating part. And then again, these people don't know how students' brains work. It's their job to question it and double and triple check it. Why in the world would they do that? If the student asks the AI for help and it helps them, the student is naturally going to trust that the AI knows what it's doing. Because after all, haven't you programmed it to be really good at its job? If not, then why are we using it in the first place? So why would a student go through the bother of double and triple checking the AI when, if he were that concerned about it, he would have just written it himself? And then he could trust that what he wrote was good because he wrote it. And he wouldn't have to rely on whether or not the AI is any good. So the arguments here just are so ridiculous. I don't even understand how they think this is logical. It's a novel concept for sure, he writes. When we view the technology as replacing an important current function, it can be scary because it represents a kind of loss. Yet there's a way to see it as a gain. Again, through educated bravery, teachers are rethinking the way they approach essay writing from start to finish. So it continues. You're writing with the AI, but it's not writing for you, says a professor at University of Pennsylvania, where he teaches innovation and entrepreneurship. For educators, embracing this change is going to be important, and it is scary. It's okay to be scared as you listen to this, but we recognize that a lot of the ways we were having people write essays before AI did not make sense. Yeah, in bad teaching classrooms, that's probably the case, but for those of us who are good teachers and have been doing this a long time and know what it means to teach writing properly, yeah, I don't need the AI to teach my students. I can do that, and I can do it better than the computer. The AI helps them catch up, the bad students, the bad writers. It gives them an explanation of where they are with their skills. For instructors, the AI helps flag the students who need the most help and attention. We can't pretend the world didn't change with ChatGPT. It's too late for that. This is here now, and whether we like it or not, we have to adjust as instructors. Again, teachers can already do all this, and good teachers have been doing all this. This other professor says that he definitely tells his students to use the generative AI to write their papers. The consequence of that is he expects them to be perfect, which you should. If you're having the computer do your work for you, you should definitely not let anything slide anymore. That's for sure. These teachers say that the AI tools are making their students far more skilled and efficient writers. They're finding that where producing essays was once seen as essential to helping students gain mastery in critical thinking and analytical and writing skills, the artificial intelligence provides students equal and even better opportunities to engage with a topic, gather and analyze information, and express their own ideas and arguments. None of that is true. Ideally, that would be true, but that's not the reality. Students are not smarter. They're not better arguers. They're not better writers. The computer is just doing the thinking and the writing for them. So they might be producing better work. So if the teacher is only looking at the final product and from that backwards assuming that, oh, the kids are getting a lot smarter, that's what it looks like, but that's not necessarily what's happening. It just sounds better because the computer does it better than the kids do it. That's all it is. He says that there's, still value in writing with good structure and good grammar. And again, he reiterates that it's very helpful for students to start with a draft from generative AI before fact-checking it or revising it. It's mind-boggling that you think students are going to spend time fact-checking and revising something that a computer that's way smarter than they are has already done for them. Is so dumb. Like, I don't even know how you thought of that. You're not thinking like a student. So here's a great example of what I meant a minute ago, that you're not smart enough. This is so great. The AI acts as a powerful guide, but the student does the bulk of the work. Not all the work, because that's what students should be doing. The student should be doing all the work. But they acknowledge the bulk of the work. Well, how much is the bulk? Is that 51% of the work? Is that what students are doing? But here's the great example. A student can ask the generative AI, what points should I consider as I write an essay about The Great Gatsby? Okay, back to what I said. If you have to ask a computer, what should I write about a particular novel, that means you don't understand the novel. You need to read more closely. You need to have more conversations with your teacher or your classmates because you don't know anything. This is what, again, as a literature professor, this also bothers me, not only as a writing teacher, but as a literature person, that we think, or these people think, that I, as a student, should start by asking the computer, what kinds of topics should I write about? That's the clearest indication that the student hasn't learned anything. So, of course, what does the computer say? It will suggest themes, including the American dream, social class and inequality, the Jazz Age, and the Roaring Twenties, and key symbols in the novel such as the green light, the eyes, the valley of ashes, etc. The technology works well when a student takes a couple of paragraphs of something they've written and asks the large language model to read it and critique its strengths and weaknesses. So wait a minute, which is it? The student started from zero and didn't have any clue what to write about, so the computer told him? Or now it's the student wrote a few paragraphs and asked the language model to read it and critique it. You're jumping back and forth here, again, conflating two things that are completely different techniques. It can help students with counterarguments and make what they've written more compelling, encouraging them to think about the essay as a good writing coach might do. Again, the AI tutor does not do the work for the students, rather it works alongside them. It'll highlight areas for improvement, provide feedback, offer suggestions, refine their work. And why doesn't the teacher just do that? That's the teacher's job. A good teacher can do this for dozens of students. I don't understand why you would want an AI to do this. Again, these people are imagining that no teachers do this, and yet all of us who are good at this already do. So then, kind of the coolest part about this, that conceivably sounds pretty nice, is that the AI reports back to the teacher and gives a kind of a progress report or the degree in which the AI assisted the student, giving a clearer sense of the student's strengths and areas for improvement. It could say, we worked on the paper for about 4 hours. The student initially had trouble coming up with a thesis, but I was able to help him by asking some leading questions. The outlining went pretty smoothly. I just had to help him ensure that the conclusion really brought everything together. He did most of the writing. I just helped him tidy up the grammar and strengthen his argument in the third paragraph. I'd recommend, based on the rubric, that he get a B+ on the assignment. Here's a breakdown according to the rubric. Conversely, if the student didn't use it properly, they say, the AI might tell the teacher, we didn't work on this essay together. It just showed up, so we should be suspicious. Again, this might work this way until a student doesn't use the program and just does it from scratch and then shows up with a paper. And you go to the computer and say, how much did you help him? And the computer says, we didn't work on this essay together. It just showed up, so you should be suspicious. Well, now you're going to accuse the kid of cheating. Maybe he actually did write it on his own completely. So now are you going to force every student to have to go through the AI tutor? What if a student doesn't want to do that? It's a very confusing thing that we have already run into from the AI detection services, where I didn't really use them because I didn't want to accuse students in a false positive. And so, I would see that it would come up as, 70% written by AI or something. And I wouldn't necessarily punish the student for it, even though I thought they were probably cheating, because I didn't want to be caught up in a false accusation situation. Well, aren't you going to be in that situation here, where now every student has to go through this program? What if they don't? I mean, I don't know why you'd force them to use a computer program if they don't need it or don't want it. That seems weird. So that was the writing chapter. That you combine the AI with stuff on writing, and I get pretty worked up. But also, again, that a good teacher can handle this on his or her own. The way I do writing and drafting projects is I do it through Google Docs, so that even if I'm not with the student that day in class, I can still monitor their writing through a Google Doc, and I can see their work, and I can see the changes they've made, and I can provide feedback, and they can make changes in real time if we want to do it, simultaneously or synchronously. And I do that for 100 students at a time. It's not that hard. I can zip through 100 students in, less than an hour. So, it's not a huge deal. We teachers have been doing this already, and if you know some tricks and ways to streamline your drafting and revising process, you can actually serve as the AI tutor, the human tutor, just as effectively, and you don't have to worry about the AI program. So there are ways to do this, and if anyone wants my advice, feel free to ask me. Just one more quick kind of deeper dive into a chapter. Again, this is English related. That's why I want to kind of cover it. And then I'll just hit a few highlights along the way through the rest of the book, because there's still a long way to go. And I want to kind of zoom ahead a little bit. So in the next chapter, it's about reading comprehension. So last chapter about writing, here is about reading. And in the very first page of this section, they're talking again about the novel, The Great Gatsby. And a student, this is a 9th grader, she's in an online class with a university, and she was stumped by the famous question about Jay Gatsby looking at the green light, and what does that all mean? And so she goes to the AI and has a conversation about it. And again, a teacher, the way that the examples that the AI gives here are interesting, because it allows the student to ask the character. It tells the computer, act like this character in the novel. And so it does. And so then you can ask the character a question about how he or she is acting in the story. So it sounds kind of cool, except, again, if you've taught the student to read properly, you don't really need this. What the other element of reading that these people aren't quite understanding is the purpose. Well, not the purpose of reading, but what happens when you read is you become the actor in the story. You get to participate in the action and the dialogue and the situations. So instead of asking Jay Gatsby, hey, why are you looking at the green light? What the reader is actually doing when they're reading about Jay standing on the dock and looking across the water to the green light is you should be wondering, what am I looking at? What am I imagining when I see that light over there? What about my own history has led me to want to stare into the darkness and see the light across the water? Because any good teacher could walk the student through this and go, well, what other things have light? What about a lighthouse? What does a lighthouse do? What does it signal to people? Well, what does the light on your front porch that you have on at night? What is that there for? There's a sense of security. There's a sense of direction. There's a sense of, is that a place that could be my home? Is that a safe place to go? Is it a warning light? Old ancient sailors sailed by the stars. So they were looking at light from the heavens. What were they using it for? Well, they were using it for direction too, for guidance on a proper path. So what might this light, according to Jay Gatsby, what might that be guiding him towards? What is he dreaming about? What is he looking forward to by looking at the light? These are all kinds of questions a good teacher would ask this ninth grade student that allows the student to become Jay Gatsby in that situation. Instead of separating yourself by asking a computer to become a character, you should be Jay Gatsby, because that's what your brain's already doing. That's what happens. There's an embodied cognition that goes on where anything you read, your body naturally mimics. You may not do it bodily, but it does it in the brain. And so you don't need to go ask a computer why Jay Gatsby does that. You just need to read more closely and pretend that you're Jay Gatsby, and a good teacher can guide you through that much better than this computer program. So even though this is kind of cool that you can have, a character in a book brought to life, it's still being done the wrong way. This isn't even how your brain works. Come on, computer science people. You need to learn about the brain first before you start doing this stuff, because it might sound fun. It might be very clever, but you could be doing this better. So leave it to smart people, leave it to good teachers that actually know how to teach literature and reading, and we can already do this. So you're doing the flashy, fancy stuff, and it's not even the right stuff. So of course, it also talks a lot about assessment. It can challenge students on their comprehension of the material. It can create quizzes and all that kind of stuff. But again, a good teacher teaches the student how to assess himself or herself. There's a lot of practice through summarizing. What the computer will do is it will just create a summary for you. That might sound nice because you're getting the information, which is what students do, but that's not how you train reading comprehension. You train reading comprehension by teaching students how to summarize for themselves. You teach them how to make predictions. You teach them how to build context and make connections to other ideas. And you also teach them to quiz themselves. So I don't need a machine to provide comprehension assessments for students when I'm going to do it better and actually train the student to assess their own comprehension as they go. And by the time they're in high school or college or adults, it's second nature. We do this automatically once you're a really good reader. But if you're always relying on the computer to, check your comprehension for you, like, okay, why don't you just learn this yourself? You'd be better off. It's faster, and you'd at least be doing the work instead of taking the shortcut. You'd actually have more comprehension. So that's what you should do, and a good teacher can help you do that. So this kind of assessment that the computer might do is explained a little more thoroughly here in this chapter, little passage I'll share with you. It said, imagine if when reading a book, a student could have a discussion with the AI at the end of every chapter. The AI might ask the student what they think about the book so far, or whether anything was particularly interesting or confusing about the material. It might inquire about major themes or whether the student agrees with the character's point of view or action. This would all happen through a Socratic dialogue. The AI would give feedback to the student and also report this feedback to the teacher. The student could, of course, ask any question they like about any aspect of what they are reading. Think about how much more engaging this would be for students than the traditional book report. It's also far richer pedagogically. Book reports today often entail students summarizing the plot while including ideas they pick up off the internet or Cliff's Notes. Okay, so two things there. Yeah, if a teacher is assigning a book report, that's a bad teacher. Again, you're writing this thinking that you're coming up with all these creative ideas. A Socratic dialogue about the thing they read? Yeah, that's what every teacher lives for. That's why we get into teaching. You want me as the teacher now to outsource this to a computer that then reports back to me about how it did Socratic teaching with a student? That's the opposite of what I want as a teacher. I want to be having the Socratic dialogue with a student. I want to be asking those probing questions and building that bond as teacher and student during the learning process. Why in the world would I want to send a computer to do the job that I love doing? That's stupid. And like I said, if you think that this is the alternative to book reports, you know nothing about what goes on in good classrooms. Teachers who do assessment about reading or literature, these kinds of, in this case, probably writing assignments, could be some sort of test, I guess. Teachers who do it right are doing way more in-depth and cool things than a book report. Like if that's your challenge that, well, this is better than a book report, like that's not a convincing argument, all right? You need to take the coolest things that really good teachers do and then compare what you do to that and see if it stacks up. You need to steel man the argument. You comparing what your AI stuff does to a book report, that's lame. You have to make a better argument than that, tech people. All right, so that's the kind of the English stuff. It goes on to many other topics in education. There's everything from history and social sciences into hard sciences and math. I want to just touch on one thing in the math section that I thought was interesting. So this professor, he teaches, I guess, education classes for students who are going to be future teachers, all right, at this university. He was a strong proponent of educators using generative AI in their classrooms. So he told his student teachers, so these are, again, college kids who are preparing to go become teachers, that they were going to need to embrace large language models as a teacher productivity tool. He felt their dread coming back at them. To win them over, he had them do the math, both literally and figuratively. It is in teaching math in particular where he saw the technology most obviously enhancing student-centered learning. So he opened up ChatGPT for his class. He asked the bot to explain the concept of p-value, a probability measure and one of the most important things for students to grasp in statistics. Moments later, the AI gave a pretty good answer. Pretty good, but not great. So again, these things aren't perfect. You have to still be smarter than the computer. And if you're smarter than the computer, why are you using the computer? Just use your own brain. So the professor typed into ChatGPT, explain this in simpler terms that a 15-year-old would understand. ChatGPT replied with a new answer, only now is giving the professor specific examples to try to build some conceptual understanding in math. If he didn't like it, he could click the try again button, and it provided him with a whole new answer. All right, so this shows that you're not smart enough. Again, if you have to ask the computer to help you explain something to a student, if you're a teacher and you have to ask the computer to help you, that means you're not a good teacher. It means you're not smart enough. Because the whole point of being a smart teacher is that you can come up with creative ways to connect with any type of student. Low-level student, high-level student. That's the point of becoming a teacher. You've practiced all that, and you have so much knowledge that you can explain things to anybody. That's what being a teacher is. So if you can't do that, it means you shouldn't be a teacher. So when this guy is running his education courses and telling them to use the AI to help them, you're basically just telling all of your students and the rest of the world who is going to employ those very same students, yeah, the students in my class that I'm going to send out to be your teachers, yeah, they're actually not very smart. They need the computer to kind of do stuff for them. Why would you want to do that? How about you teach your teachers to be really good at this? in this case math, to be math experts. And experts not only in the math, but experts at explaining the math to all different levels of students. That's what a proper professor of education would be doing, instead of saying, well, use the computer to help you explain stuff. That's so wrong. I have a hard time even keeping my composure, because it undermines everything those of us who have dedicated our lives to being expert teachers. It undermines all of that. And it just says, yeah, you're not smart enough, so go use the computer to do it for you. Then a couple pages later, it offers a dialogue, which again, I don't think is real. Again, could be wrong, but this seems made up. And the reason I don't think it's real is because it has the student ask a question about the math topic that they were just covering. The student asks, what is a p-value? And then again, like all the AI, it uses an exclamation point. Ah, p-value. It's a fun concept. Like anyone ever talks like that. And the computer sort of has this back and forth where it tries to gauge how much the kid knows. But then ultimately, as you see, again, close reader can see what's happening here. After about a page of this back and forth, the AI version of the half of the exchange jumps automatically into using the p-value for statistics in an example. It still has not yet explained the very first question the student had. What actually is the p-value? What does p even stand for? It never explains that. It just jumps right into it, which again makes me think this isn't real, that Khan probably just made all this up to make it look like it was a computer talking, because the student's question never actually gets answered. So again, if you're using the computer to have this dialogue and it doesn't actually help the student address the very question it was asking, the basic terminology that was confusing, it's probably not a good AI program. So that was the math section that I just thought, this doesn't really make sense. I don't know why he selected this. There is a section about science, and it uses global warming as an example. And it shows how the AI can, if a student is wondering if something's factual, if there's any legitimate counter arguments, it can ask the AI. And Khan basically says that the AI can be programmed to be very good at not being biased. So the example is it talks about global warming, which, whatever, not a topic I particularly care about. But it basically says there are no good reasons to not believe in this. It says the overwhelming scientific consensus supports that global warming is real. Whatever, fine. The problem here, though, is whether that's true in this case doesn't really matter to me. But what about all the other cases, especially recently, where there was overwhelming scientific consensus that turned out to be flat out wrong? How about all of COVID? How about the Russia hoax stuff? How about Hunter Biden's laptop stuff? All the things that were the consensus that all the smart people supposedly agreed upon. And if you ask the AI, is this thing real? And the computer says, yes, here's the consensus, everyone agrees. And it turns out that none of that was real. How much can we actually trust this? So again, back to what I said at the very beginning. Look, I know they're trying their best, and I appreciate the efforts they're making on addressing bias and all that stuff, because he makes a good point that, look, even teachers have biases, and yes, many do. Those of us who are a good teacher actively work to not have those in the classroom. So, again, but no one's perfect. So I respect that they're trying to make things neutral. But even in a topic like this, where there might be doubt, but that doubt is, fairly ill-founded, how can we be sure that what you're reporting for the student as scientific truth is actually scientific truth? Because after all, they're still human beings who created this. Remember, you, Mr. Khan, and all the other computer science people, you're still people. You guys make mistakes too. So in an effort to not be biased, how can we be sure that you're not going to be biased as well? And again, we've just had too many examples in the last couple of years where We were told, here's the consensus. Everyone believes this. If you don't believe it, you're some sort of denier. You're a bad person. You're an idiot. And it turns out that those things were actually wrong. Although scientific consensus, facts were not actually true. So again, I know they're trying, but even in the sciences that you'd think would be pretty cut and dry, unlike things like literature or the other humanities, it's not perfect. It's not going to do that perfectly either. All right, as I move towards the end, there's a couple of things here that Khan talks about that the AI can do that are moving a little bit away from some of the academic stuff, the hard content area stuff in school that I've been talking about, to some of the more social elements that young people might deal with. And so he has an AI academic coach, and it's in a chapter about mental health coaching. Like, we need to be reinforcing these problems further. We already know most of this is overdiagnosed, and yet here we have AI totally going along with it. So here it's an example of a student who's nervous before a test. And again, if the student's nervous before a test, that's what the teacher's for. That's what the parent is for. That's what a good friend is for. That's what guidance counselors for. There are already people who do this. Why in the world are we having our students type into a computer, please help me reduce my stress for this test? It's just silly. A human being can do all this. This isn't hard. And it gives, if I can find it here, this absolutely absurd example. Again, this coaching that it provides, where the academic coach, the AI academic coach says, look around you. What objects do you notice? The student apparently says a desk, a pencil, a cat, a cell phone. And the academic coach says, okay, now which of these objects do you think is helping you with your focus and which of these are hurting you? The student apparently replies, again, I think all this is made up, but whatever. Well, the cell phone sometimes distracts me. And the AI goes, well, all right then. Is there anything you can do about that? And the student just goes along with it and says, I could maybe put it somewhere out of sight. First of all, if you think this is how an interaction with teenagers go, you don't know anything about teenagers. But also, human beings have this same conversation with students every day, and they don't do it. Why in the world would they listen to the computer to tell them, hey, maybe you should put your phone away while you're trying to study, when the adults actively tell them, put it away? And not just put it away, there's going to be consequences if you don't put it away. You're going to get in trouble. I'm going to deduct points. If you're a parent, you're going to get grounded, or whatever the consequences. And the student still doesn't do it. Or the student already knows that the phones or something else is a distraction, and they will openly admit it. And they still won't do anything about it. So the fact that he's presenting the case that all you need is this AI academic coach, and it'll get kids on the right track to not be distracted and put their phones away, and everything will be great. That's so absurd. I can't believe they didn't come up with a better example than that, because students don't even listen to the human being. Why would I listen to a computer tell me that? That's dumb. But the worst of all, besides an AI academic coach giving you this stupid advice, is how it deals with parents. A couple more pages ahead, there's a section where there, again, is this imaginary dialogue between a parent and the AI. Here's how it goes. The AI becomes a parenting coach. So the parent says, my teenage daughter is having trouble working with a teacher in her school. I don't know what to do to help her. Do you have any parenting advice? So you're a parent. Your daughter's a teenager, so you've known her for quite a long time. She's been in school a long time by this point, and you don't know how to help. And you're going to ask a computer to give you advice. All right. I'm not sure what kind of parent you are, but let's keep reading. Of course, the AI answers with an exclamation point. Oh, that can be a pickle. Have you thought about having a chat with the teacher to understand their perspective? It might help to know what they're thinking. All right, so the genius AI, the big parenting advice that this parent is apparently so dumb that they don't even know their own kid, comes to you seeking wisdom, AI technology, and the best advice you can offer is, well, have you tried talking to the teacher? That's the genius level AI that we need to go consult, because we're so lost. I couldn't come up with, hey, maybe I should talk to my daughter's teacher. That might help smooth things over. Genius. But here's what the parent says. Well, I've tried that. It's like we're talking past each other. Another exclamation point. That's a toughie. Again, like they think this is how people talk. It's it's so not human, it's ridiculous. How about bringing in a third party, like a school counselor or principal, to help mediate the conversation? Could that be a next step? Again, if a teacher already tried that and it didn't really work, I don't know how dumb you would have to be to not have thought of that. Like, yeah, maybe I should bring in a third party to listen to both sides and help us navigate this conversation. These are not genius steps, and yet you think this is an amazing parenting coach. What if I want to try to reach her myself? Any suggestions? The parent asks. Oh, you mean talking to your own kid? Genius! Yes, that's what you should have been doing all along, because that's what any normal good parent would do. I didn't need to ask an AI whether or not I should talk to my own kid. Of course, the AI responds with an exclamation. Ah, do-it-yourself approach. Dealing with such situations can be challenging, but there are several steps you can take to help support your daughter. Talk to her about her concerns and encourage her to express her feelings and thoughts about the situation. Assure her that you are there to listen and support her. Also, gain a clear understanding of the issue by gathering all the facts. Ask your daughter specific questions about what difficulties she's experiencing. Yada, yada, yada. Again, all basic things. Any human being, much less a parent, should know, you know what, if someone's having a problem and I want to try to understand it, I should probably spend some time listening. I should probably gather the facts. I should probably ask some open-ended questions to try to get them to talk and feel comfortable. Why do I need an AI parenting coach? This whole conversation is so dumb. I don't know who the editor of this book was, but I can't believe the editor allowed Khan to use these pieces of dialogue. This is so stupid that I need an AI parenting coach to talk to my own child. Right. And that section concludes with telling the reader that, this doesn't replace you. This just acts as a support system. This is like your parenting assistant. And you have to wonder, how long will this take before a parent says, wow, what a great idea. The parent just tells the AI, hey, have my kid do this. Are they doing it? Report back to me. Now have the kid do this. Maybe the parent wouldn't even talk to their own kid anymore, because after all, the AI is so good that you thought it was just going to be guiding you. It's just supporting you. Well, how long would it take before it actually just replaced you and did your work for you? Because that's what's going to happen. That's what already happens. How many times do we see parents just shove an iPad in front of a kid's face, or let them play on their phone, or let them play video games for 8 straight hours, or whatever it is, because they don't want to have to actually talk to them or do an activity with them or teach them something. Parents already are outsourcing their parenting responsibilities to pieces of passive technology. This one's maybe not passive because this one is more interactive. It's still outsourcing. And so if a parent just starts to figure out, oh, you know what, that AI does a pretty good job, I guess I don't need to do any of it anymore. As long as I guess I have food in the house, that's about all I need to raise my kid, because the computer will just do it for me. Because that's what's going to happen. They already do that with other pieces of technology. And this is even better, so why wouldn't they? So that's where ultimately Khan comes back to throughout the whole book, and especially at the end, as I wrap up. He constantly says that, look, the AI is not going to replace you. It's not going to take the place of a good classroom teacher. It's not going to take the place of a parent or a therapist or counselor or any, service profession where we're trying to help anybody, but especially our children. And I just don't agree with that. And even if that's sort of true, we have to also think what those professions are going to become. You don't need a teacher now in the classroom. All you need now is, you don't even need someone with a college degree. You basically just need, if you're going to have kids in a classroom still even, you just need someone to supervise. You need someone to read the reports that the AI spits out. You don't even need them to input their grades in the gradebook, because you can just have the computer upload their scores into the grading system, and that's all done too. At what point would we even need a teacher with a college degree or a college professor with a PhD or a master's degree? If you're just there to sort of supervise, what is a teacher then? The AI becomes the teacher and the human becomes the assistant. That's what's happening. So he has everything backwards here. And maybe that's the goal. And if that's the goal, that we don't really need teachers anymore, we'll just have computers do everything. Okay, well, at least say that. But do not try to present it to us that this doesn't replace the human beings, because it most definitely will. Anything that's easier and faster and cheaper, especially in the case of teachers, is going to be used. Why wouldn't you use it? So it's going to take parents and teachers to stand up and say, no, I will not let this happen because I want to educate my child. I want to be in a classroom with real students, and they want to be in a classroom with a real teacher. And we're going to commit to maintaining those learning environments. Because if you leave it up to the school systems or whoever else, you're going to be replaced. That's just the way it's going to be. May not be completely. Maybe they won't take a human being out of the classroom completely. But that job's going to be reduced to, like, I don't know, babysitter, a secretary, you're just an assistant. You're just there to make sure the kids don't burn the building down. That's not teaching anymore. So he keeps saying that, and by the end, he really hits that home, and I would like to believe him, but I just don't. Like I said at the start, this has happened because we as teachers have allowed it to happen. This is perhaps the market answer to low levels of education. If teachers would have been doing their jobs all along, if we would be smart enough, if we would be true scholars, if we would be good educators and leaders that cared about our culture and the great wisdom of the past that we have been entrusted to pass on to our kids and to teach them about great art and historical leaders and scientific discoveries and all the things that make our culture so valuable. If we had been doing a good job of that all along, there may have not been a need for anyone to go, hey, I wonder if a computer could do this. So it's our own fault. All the bad teachers out there, all the teachers who don't know enough math, who don't know enough English, who don't know enough science, all those things. Yeah, you caused this. You have led to the diminishing value of real teachers. And so this seems like a viable option. If the computer can do it better than you, maybe that's what should happen. Again, I don't agree with that, but I also believe we have to be a lot better. And so we have a choice to make. It's still up to us to decide which direction we're going to go if we're going to allow the powers that be, whether it's government or some other school systems or whoever the people in charge of education are going to be. If it's going to be up to them, they're going to choose convenience. That's just the way it's going to be. And so we as parents, we as educators are going to have to take it upon ourselves to, again, say, nope, I'm going to be in charge of educating my child. And I'm going to send my school or my child to a school where there's a scholarly teacher in the classroom who has an investment in the children and who truly cares about guiding them in their discovery and their knowledge and all of that, all of their schooling experience. We're going to have to be vigilant in maintaining that human connection because this is looking like a better option. And, he makes a very compelling argument. Again, I've studied this enough that I know it's not a great argument, so I'm trying to encourage all of you to believe me. But that's where we're at. And it's one of those things that, it's not like machinery where it's clear that a machine can do certain things better than a person, right? Like, it doesn't matter how good of a shoveler I am. A bulldozer is going to do it way better than I could ever do it, right? A human being does not have the size and strength and speed to accomplish on a construction site, moving dirt from one, pile to another pile. A bulldozer can. And so, yeah, you should use the bulldozer. But there are still certain things that a human being can do better than the machines. And teaching is still one of those. Yes, there are some cool qualities going on in this book. But I do not agree that it's a good thing that AI revolutionizes education. But it's up to us as parents and teachers to stand up against it and reclaim the true purpose of education, which is guiding our students in a moral way that maintains the culture and continues building a truly intelligent and empathetic society. And I'm not convinced that the AI can do that. That's just me. But now I've read this book, so you don't have to. Leave some comments below. If you have any questions, I can answer them. Read the book for yourself if you like, but I hope you don't need to now. That's it. Thanks for listening, and be on the lookout next week for a little more on the topic of online learning. We'll continue a little bit of a further investigation of technology with some ideas that no one thinks about when they think about online education. That's coming up next week. Thanks for listening.